Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome. We're just opening the room here and letting people come in here in the next couple minutes. But thank you for being with us today. Hopefully, you're all staying warm on this very frigid day. I don't think there's any better place to be than on this webinar right now. So we'll give it another minute or so, and we'll get started. And I will mention while we're waiting, if you do have questions throughout the webinar, you can use the chat feature. We will be monitoring that. So please feel free to ask questions in there and we will be monitoring. I believe today we have over 200 people registered, so we're very happy that you're all able to join us today. And also this is being recorded. So it will be on our Center for Rural Policy and Development YouTube page. And I believe, Jake, it'll be on your website as well
It will,
for
yes.
recording.
Yep.
So, all right. Well, we'll get started. And thank you, everyone, and welcome again on this frigid day. Interesting times we're living in. And honestly, we're coming into year 5 of our interconnected series between the Center for Rural Policy and Development and the Citizens League. And I think back to when we first started this and the brainstorm we did, and I don't know, it's for a time such as this, bringing rural and urban together, having a common cause, a common way of doing things, being able to listen to one another and understand one another. And so, even though things are rough in our state right now, I feel one of the ways moving forward is having conversations and learning from one another and visiting one another. And so I really think the Minnesota Legislative Exchange that the Citizens League is doing is one way of moving forward. But I just want to mention very quickly, I'm Julie Tesh, President and CEO of the Center for Rural Policy and Development. And for those of you not aware, the Center for Rural Policy and Development, we provide high quality, objective, and nonpartisan research to examine and advance policy and decision making, rural advocacy, and civic engagement for greater Minnesota's development. So I always like to say we all value good health care. What happens in Ramsey County, how you do that in Ramsey County is different than in Chippewa County. And how is that? What is that? And so our whole vision at the center is a future where the rural ways of life are understood, valued, and sustainable. And our value proposition is very easy. We want to prepare Minnesotans to define their own futures wherever they're at. And so we're happy that you're here today. Again, welcome to year 5 of Interconnected. We're excited to have you. I will say the first exchange that MLE and the Citizens League did, we were their very first stop, our board meeting in New London, Minnesota. And we were thrilled to have them there and to be the first stop and to welcome them uh, and welcome a few other legislators as well. So it's really great to see so many of you on here today to learn about this, to learn from them, and how we can keep on moving these conversations forward because they are so important. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Jake Loesch, Executive Director of the Citizens League.
Thanks, Julie. I want to echo Julie's remarks. Thank you all for joining us today and your interest in this program. From Citizens League's perspective, the legislative exchange has been just an absolute joy and pleasure for us to operate. So Citizens League has been around for over 73 years, coming up on almost 74 now. And we've always focused on civic engagement and public policy and really working across differences to build trust and bridge divides. We have always been a nonpartisan, nonprofit organization that's core to who we are, because we believe that the best public policy and the way that we build the best state for everyone is to make sure that diverse perspectives are at the table and we are working across those differences to build relationships and trust in all of our communities. And as Julie really referenced, I think we're at a moment in time in our state where that feels more essential than ever. And I'm so grateful to the legislative leaders who are joining us today to share about their experiences and their willingness. So the Legislative Exchange is a program that we launched just last April. So it's not even a year old. And I'm really proud to share with you all that in that time, we've already done 8 trips with 4 pairs of legislators, and 2 of those pairs are with us today. So the Legislative Exchange is pretty simple in its concept. We pair up a Republican and a Democrat from the state legislature, and we take them on exchange visits to each other's districts, typically for about 12 to 36 hours, depending on the distance and the travel and how far is between them and how much time we have. And we really focus those visits on get the legislators having the opportunity to get to know each other, and also to meet with civic leaders, community organizations, businesses, to really get to understand not just the other person, the other legislator, their colleague, but also another community. I think many of us in Minnesota are used to traveling around our state or seeing different parts of it. But being able to have that experience and be introduced to a community by the legislator who represents that community really brings another level to that understanding and that trust in those relationships. So we are extremely proud of this program, and I can't stress enough the gratitude that we feel to these legislators who have been a part of it. So without further ado, I want you to hear from them for as long as possible. I'm going to hand it over to Brian McClung, the CEO of McClung PR, who is going to help facilitate today's conversation. Thanks, Brian.
Hey, thanks, Jake. Really appreciate that. And thank you for the great work that the Citizens League is doing, bringing together the Minnesota Legislative Exchange and your partnership with the Center for Rural Policy and Development on this interconnected series. It really has been just a fantastic way to bridge these gaps. And I think for many of us that have worked on this and our firm, McClung PR, we do communications, public relations for the Center for Rural Policy and Development, been doing that for many years. And so we've been a part of Interconnected from its inception. And so we've had the opportunity to see, how we can come together. And, we really started Interconnected with these two organizations, just thinking about how we have so much in common and what binds us together is so much stronger than any alleged gaps or divides. And I think the Minnesota Legislative Exchange now is really kind of taking that to a new level and bringing us together, bringing these legislators together. And just for the audience, again, by way of background, I'm Brian McClung, CEO of McClung PR. It's a public relations, public affairs firm that I founded coming up on 16 years ago. And prior to starting our firm, I served as the Deputy Chief of Staff, Director of Communications, and Press Secretary for Governor Tim Pawlenty. And so I know from my time in the governor's office, Minnesota is a big state. We have a lot of room to cover. And so, think about an exchange program, right? When I think of an exchange program as traveling to foreign countries, all of this, we have this exchange program right here in Minnesota with such a unique and important opportunity to build relationships and to deepen an understanding of what we're all facing in Minnesota. So I'd like to invite our four legislators who are joining us today to turn on their cameras as well, and I'll introduce them as they join us. As Jake mentioned, there have been 8 pairs of legislators that are part of this. We're lucky to have, or 8 legislators. We are lucky to have 4 of them joining us today. These 4 were paired up together as part of the Minnesota Legislative Exchange. So we'll have a conversation about the program, how their experience in it. And again, we invite you to ask questions as well. So I'll keep an eye on the chat. If something comes up in the conversation, you'd like to join in, really appreciate you doing that. But just real quick intros of our 4 lawmakers for those who are joining us. Start with Representative Dave Baker, District 16B from the Wilmer area, first elected in 2014. And he's a small business owner, deep roots in his communities in West Central Minnesota. Representative Ned Carroll, District 42A, Plymouth area. Representative Carroll served on the Plymouth City Council prior to being in the legislature. He's already getting razzed for wearing a Kentucky sweatshirt by somebody in the chat. And is an attorney as well, first elected in 2022, so serving in his second term. Representative Mary Frances Clardy, for the district next door to where I live. She's in District 53A in Inver Grove Heights. Representative Clardy, also elected in 2022. Longtime educator, former school board member, extensive experience in education policy and community service. And Representative Natalie Zeleznikar. Representative Zeleznikar is from the Hermantown area. District 3B includes Hermantown, Two Harbors, parts of Lake and St. Louis counties in northeastern Minnesota. So grateful to all of you for taking the time to join us today and for this conversation. So I just want to start off for each of you, if you could just tell us a little bit about what motivated you to participate in the Minnesota Legislative Exchange. When you heard about this opportunity, this idea, what sparked that for you and got you to yes for participating in this? And Representative Baker, we'll start off with you.
Thanks, Brian. Thank you, everybody, for joining us today. I feel really honored to have been asked to do this, especially alongside of Representative Clardy. We have really been able to connect. I think the reason why I wanted to, and again, we were lucky to be the first couple, I guess, if you want to say it that way, to kind of run through this process. Since I've been here, my first session was 2015. I've always found my bipartisan work to be something that means the most to me, because then I can feel like we're actually passing laws and policy and rules that aren't going to be flipped on one day, turned off another because somebody has the majority or not. I get sick when I see things that are super hyper partisan, and most of my colleagues know that about me. I don't want to work with people on either side that just are just so tunnel vision that it just doesn't make any sense. So it has to work. And again, I think knowing what our work ahead was to get to know, again, a member that I hadn't had a chance to work much with. Rep. Clardy and I really didn't serve on a lot of committees together, and I couldn't wait to get to know her. I think that the timing was really unique for us to have a very special bond, because our first meeting was so shortly after our loss of Melissa Hortman. And so we decided to kind of go through that. But I feel like our emotional connection is even better now because we worked through all that together. That was a serious gut punch to everybody, but especially some of us. And again, I especially say that to our DFL colleagues. So anyway, that's why I did it. I want to make sure that while I'm in the legislature, I want to make a difference, but I want to do it in a bipartisan fashion whenever we possibly can.
Thank you, Representative Baker. And Representative Clardy, maybe you could go next. So you mentioned that you and Representative Baker were paired up. We're the first ones, had a chance to say hi to you all at the Center for Rural Policy and Development board meeting that was out in Representative Baker's district at that time. But what helped you get to yes, or what was interesting to you when this idea was brought to you to be part of the Minnesota Legislative Exchange?
Well, as a teacher, I'm a lifetime learner. And so I know that proximity just, helps you with a better understanding. So proximity of like getting to know someone better just helps you move forward. So it was curiosity, but also we hear a lot about areas that are drastically different than ours. I am a suburban member and he's considered more of a rural member. So with that, there's a lot of generalizations. So I wanted to make my own decisions on that. Plus, I'd watched the work that Rep. Baker had done, and I was just fascinated to be able to get so close to that. So, yeah.
That's great. And Representative Carroll, we were just chatting before we started about how you all were just recently in your district in Plymouth, and it sounds like Jake Loesch was testing out one of the slides at the community center. So that's a added benefit of this exchange. But tell us a little bit from your perspective about what interested you in being part of this program.
Well, for me, it was a no doubter. I mean, the opportunity to participate in a program like this is right up my alley, I think. I'm always looking for bipartisan agreement. In fact, from my first day at my first year, when I came on the floor, I'd purposely come down the center aisle so I can engage with my Republican colleagues. And for example, Danny Nadeau, who sits down towards the front, as well as others. And so for me, it's part and parcel of who I am. When I was on city council, I would do that. We had a split council in terms of, it was a 4-3 council. 4 usually went one way, 3 the other way. And I would look to work with the group that I wasn't aligning with on a particular vote, and it shifted. I mean, it was shifting coalitions and things like that. So it was just a natural thing that I do, and I look for, and also as an attorney, understanding, what the other side is saying so you can respond to it and understand their position and then either agree with it or look to improve it. And that's what I look to do in the legislature.
Oh, that's great. Thank you. And Representative Zeleznikar, for you as well, what was interesting to you about this idea and this concept when they brought it to you?
My background was being a nursing home administrator or a CEO for elderly services for the last 30 years. And so in that role, I never knew who an independent Democrat or Republican was. It was just a goal to provide fantastic services, serve the communities. And in this legislative role, I came in the minority. And honestly, it never dawned on me to run based on if I'd be in the majority or minority. I wanted to serve the people. And so it to me, working together is just a critical thing to get anything done. And whether you're in the majority or the minority party, to serve the people has to be the priority. And I looked at this as an opportunity to get to know, Representative Carroll and I sit on the health committee, but I really didn't know him. And in my lifetime, I never got anything done without building trust. And I really believe that the only way to build trust in relationships, it's not any different in a legislative role. You have to spend time together, and politics is second. You have to build a foundation of trust first and foremost with people. And if you don't allow that intentional time, and I was looking forward to that. And it was just a truly spectacular opportunity to be have the opportunity to be selected. And I think we did just that. So that was it for me.
That's great. Well, I just wanted this next question, just throw it out to all of you. And just maybe if you can share with us an example, something that you saw on your visit to your colleague's district or a conversation that you had there, or something that was maybe unexpected. Because I think that's one of the great things with this Minnesota Legislative Exchange is, putting legislators in a place that they haven't been before, haven't spent time, might be just a kind of a different setting, and learning something new about that community that might change how you approach things or something to reflect on. So any one of you just, yeah, turn on your mic and jump right in. Just curious to hear an example or something that kind of stuck with you afterwards that you could share with us.
I was fascinated when I visited Wilmer with the amount of diversity that was there. Because living in the Twin Cities area, sometimes when you look at greater Minnesota, you don't know that that exists. And where that plays into is the schools. And I'm always fascinated and interested in the schools, and a lot of the topics that we cover at the legislature seem like they sometimes more apply to some urban. But after seeing the rich diversity and then also how it was embraced, it kind of made me think of things a little differently, and kind of check some of my thinking and where it might have come from. And that's the same thing within like the small business community as well. So, yep.
Yeah, to that follow up there too. I saw some aha moments in Rep. Clardy's district too, when we were really engaging in some corporate headquarter clients and some constituents of hers, and how refineries work and how trading companies work. It was really fascinating. What I really enjoyed was seeing her ask the right questions when it came to business leaders and businesses, because there's been so much pent up, I think, frustration or concern about me as a business guy who really focuses on a lot of workforce things and the future. She really wanted to know from people right in front of me and in front of others. It was a smaller group. She really wanted to understand. I appreciated her questioning and, diving into those, issues that were important to them, but she wanted to hear that. I felt like that was a moment for me to say, actually, I think she really wants to understand this. So that was helpful, and I hope that we can work together on some things that we can agree on.
That's great. Representative
Natalie,
Carroll.
thank you. I had a great time in Natalie's district, and I met a whole bunch of different people, different walks of life. One that sticks out in particular is a lumberjack or forester, or I can't remember the proper term, but I call him a lumberjack. And in fact, he has a podcast and he plays the Monty Python Lumberjack song. And those of you who know what I'm talking about. Those of you who don't, I'm not gonna burden you with it. But anyway, this guy was so fascinating. He was highly intelligent, very articulate, and just, a regular guy, but also extremely skilled at what he did and very passionate about Minnesota's forests. And so I'm a farm kid. I'm not from the farm, but I grew up in farm country in Northwest Iowa, where corn and beans, rule the day. And, back then also sheep, cattle, and pigs. So, I mean, that's what I'm steeped in. And my dad was a small business owner. And so a lot of these things in Natalie's district resonated with my background. But this one guy in particular, this lumberjack, and I'm not making this up, his name is Peter Wood. And it was just, he's such a charming guy. And so getting to know him and his family, and it's a family business, I think it's a several generation business, was just outstanding. And I'm so glad I got to do that. And thank you to the Citizens League and those involved in setting this up, because I wouldn't have had that opportunity otherwise.
That's great. Representative Zeleznikar, any kind of moment or experience that you had on your exchange that kind of stuck with you?
Just so many. It was just a delight. I mean, Rep Carroll, Ned and I just had a great time. He in my district, and then when I was in Plymouth, we both grew up in farm areas. I've lived in northern Minnesota my entire work career, and so I think what was most I forgot all the diverse. I mean, I knew the businesses that were in Plymouth and that area, but I was just amazed the Fortune 500 businesses and the amount of them, and the big scale of businesses. Where I live, it's literally a mom and pop shop is the typical business model you're going to see. So it was really, I was so fascinated by the technology, the manufacturing, the innovation that we saw in Ned's district, and just to see the pieces from my district with timber and Lake Superior and mining, and how people make money in my district. And then also seeing that the school model was completely different. I grew up with a principal that my dad was my principal in middle school, and our kids, went to a much smaller school in Hermantown, and that's considered a big district in our area, but it is nothing compared to Wayzata. And so when I saw that, I was just amazed at how it's done, what it was, and what I learned from it all was that great things can happen in many, many different ways. And but the heart of the communities in both of our districts, education plays a really big role, and so does the business community. And it was fascinating to me to see the differences, and then where there's also common ground.
If I could just clarify,
Yeah,
when Natalie mentioned Wayzata, the Wayzata School District is based in Plymouth, and it's not called the Plymouth School District, it's called Wayzata. There's only one school that's actually in the town of Wayzata, and that's Wayzata West Middle School. Just to clarify, thanks.
Yeah, no, those are great answers. One of the things I wanted to kind of explore with you all, that certainly I think the long-term hope of the Minnesota Legislative Exchange, right, is to really deepen these bipartisan relationships in the hopes that it turns into bipartisan legislation and issues where Republicans and Democrats are finding common ground and working together. And so I'm curious, I don't, like Jake was saying, the program just started in April. So this upcoming session will really be the first full legislative session since it's gotten underway. But I'm curious if you feel like participating in the Minnesota Legislative Exchange has kind of changed how you think about the bipartisan relationships you have in the Minnesota House. And even ultimately, if you're starting to think about places where you could co-author legislation with the people that you've been on the exchange with, or think about opportunities to showcase how this is bringing folks together. So just kind of curious to get your thoughts about if there's a mindset shift that even comes, from this type of experience.
Just comment on that. Ned and I did two appearances on Peter Wood's Let the Sawdust Fly podcast together, which was really fun after Ned joined ours, and he enjoyed that too. And I think what it shows people is that we are both interested in finding solutions. And so I think that's the key thing. We're both on the health committee. We did some bipartisan work last year that I think was great. And, I have no doubt that, he and I will be brainstorming on, what other ideas we could have to try to do that. And who knows, maybe there'll be 4 of us or 6 of us that did this thing that'll come up with something that's really important to our state. So, that was a great experience.
Peter, Brian, let me just say that the short answer for me is no, it's not going to change, because I always look to do that. I always look to have bipartisan, cooperation and participation in the bills that I've introduced. That's a goal of mine, and I look for people to join me in whatever proposal it is. But it's certainly, this experience has certainly, deepened that commitment as well.
I know for me, again, knowing Rep. Clardy's background in education makes me want to find something that we can work together on. We have reached out recently, and we're going to sit down and kind of talk about certain components that I think we will find some easy common ground on. And again, I think it's just building this trust so that if I ever want to sit down with her on something that's a little bit more dicey, if you will, with maybe it's around workforce or any little tweaks we want to do around paid family or ESSD, whatever it might be, maybe something different, that I hope that our ability to start trusting each other in the front end is something that we can just be very authentic about, not dreaming that it's going to be anything that's going to be like, upsetting the apple cart kind of a thing, but it's just building this level of trust to know that no matter what happens here, I am not going to want to have you get stuck in a very bad vote or something that I can't help support you. To me, it's that trust level that we're going to have both ways. If I try to support something that's really important to her too, that maybe my caucus might have some issues with, I'm going to know, though, it's probably for the right reason, that we need to push a little harder to our own caucuses to say, we can get some votes on this, and I can get some votes over here too. Let's see if we can't trust each other a little bit more instead of just going in our corners and being told how to vote on, or suggested how to vote on things. This is where it really should happen, and we've got to kind of fight for some of those things in our own caucus.
Mm-hmm. I would agree. Trust is such a big thing. And when I think of Minnesota Nice, it's Representative Baker, but it's been authentically shown through like the meetings that we had with the schools and the businesses and stuff. He's just, he is what you see. He's authentic. People trust him. And that's important for me because I like to do work with people that I really can trust. And then also, I have a lot to learn about small businesses. My family has been involved in small businesses since I've been little and before I was little, but I have a lot to learn in that aspect. So I totally see us working together on some things. This year is going to be really interesting because it is a policy year. So we're going to have to be real creative in what we come up with, but definitely do want to work with, Rep. Baker on some things.
Yeah, I want to kind of work in one of the ideas that's in the chat here about kind of the national pressure on politics. It feels like politics has become more nationalized, right? I mean, Tip O'Neill famously said that all politics is local, but these days it seems to be kind of flipped on its head. And a lot of the narrative, and whether it's social media and everything else, is driven by outside forces. And so I wanted to see if you all could reflect on, I think we have 135 people watching this live now, and probably hundreds more who will watch the tape. But I wish it were, 3 million Minnesotans who could see the level of respect that you all have for one another, your willingness to collaborate and work together, because I don't think that's the message most people are getting about our politics. And so I wonder if you could share some thoughts about how can this experience help you reflect on how do we push back on some of those national narratives and this idea that Republicans and Democrats have to be in opposition and fighting one another all the time? Where is the room for that, and how can this program be part of that type of conversation?
Well, that's a good one. That's a tricky one, and maybe I'll take the first stab at this and then see where that goes. Again, I think for us, a lot of it is the brand that we supposedly represent, whether it's a Democrat or Republican. We sometimes are put into a visual scene that people think that all Democrats think this way or all Republicans think this way because that's what the governor has done or that's what the president has done. So just to lay it on the table, I do not agree with everything that President Trump is doing. And I share that openly with people that I'm being careful of, because if you go too far, too hard, you're ruining your life as a policymaker if you want to do this. On the same side, I've been very open about my criticism about the leader in the state of Minnesota, who I think that also has poorly represented all Democrats on a lot of things that they've tried to do too. So when we've got that part of it that we're all facing, it's easy for some of us to connect on certain bills and do this and that. But then when you start playing it in the big world of the political gamesmanship and the edges and the bases that lose their mind when a Republican might want to challenge or question, I want some more information on what is ICE doing with such and such of this and this. I want information. I need it to be able to reply to my constituents at home. Same thing with the governor's office. I was incredibly frustrated during a lot of legislative stuff. I couldn't get into the governor's inner circle to ask him, why are we doing it this way? So part of it is how the leadership in those parties are acting or not acting and or misbehaving or whatever you want to call it. And it's the strength of us members here that need to at some point find a way to communicate a message that isn't hurting our team, but also trying to say, I think we've got room to compromise. And I think that is the scalpel that some of us need to try to get to a point where Minnesota can be so much better than what it looks right now today on national TV. This is insane. And I don't know exactly all the next steps to do, Brian, but what we can do is a heck of a lot better. And it's going to take real leadership at the top to figure out how we can then, as team players on those teams, how do we come together then and start talking about it without feeling like we're going to get our head cut off because we may not agree with our own party. That would just be my quick analysis to where it gets really dicey. Is it's right here in front of us. So we can talk about that all day long.
Yeah, I guess I wanted to chime in. Just being in the House, this is my second term, and the media has a job to do, and they do it. A lot of the stuff we see is sensationalized, in my opinion. I mean, we agree that, different sides have different, values or priorities, right? So as a legislator, it's our job to stay grounded. So like in what I'm saying there is like when people contact us that agree with us, we need to call them. When people disagree with us, we need to call them because we each represent about like 44,000 people. And we're their representative. We're there to represent them and not just our values. So it will be complicated going on, but by establishing a base where you can communicate with people or you choose to communicate, because again, like I was saying, we're elected by a lot of people and not elected by a lot of people, but it's our responsibility to represent them. So, some of the some of the major issues on here our parties will not agree on, but we need to figure out how to work together on it.
Well, I think you raise a good point too, that the boring parts don't get covered, right? So that doesn't get the attention. It's the controversy and conflict that gets attention. And so it might seem like that's all of it when there's still the boring part underneath, right? Trying to find solutions and work together and all of that. And so maybe it's partly all of our jobs, everybody who's here, is to look for and amplify the good parts of working together and not just the angry voices and social media that make it feel like everything is on fire all the time. When there is good work happening as well. Representative Carroll or Representative Zeleznikar, would you want to add to that idea of how do we, find a way to sometimes push back against these broader party narratives and find ways to work together?
Sure, Brian, I'll go. So you having served in the governor's office back in the day, you understand more than others, that for the most part, there's just a lot of boring legislation that comes through. Boring, but important. I mean, there's not fireworks in most of it. And, me for one, I try to avoid, controversy, even though I'm an attorney, but I'm not looking for fireworks. I'm looking to get work done. And, I don't like to, my approach is not to be controversial. It's to be cooperative, collaborative, and work on solutions that'll work for everybody or most everybody.
That's great. Representative Zeleznikar, any thoughts on that part of the challenge?
Well, I appreciate all the comments that were made. I think at the end of the day, this process just reminded me of what Paul Harvey always said, and now here's the rest of the story. And doing this it just really highlighted that quote that has stuck in my head. I found it an interesting way of saying things, but I think it's true that we have to listen and learn as a state representative representing, 40 something thousand people. And what does that look like? The reality is getting something done is what matters to me, actually accomplishing something. And so that is, taking the time to really get to know people, because then you can find how are you going to pivot? How are you going to move? What kinds of things, can you compromise on? And that's the key word. You can easily find conflict and you can easily find the chaos, but where can you find the compromise? And that's, I think, the deal that needs to be thought through. And that's what I'm thinking about too. There's some things that just aren't going to be possible and maybe just a priority, but it doesn't mean that something can't get done down the road. But strategic planning requires us as leaders to look at what are the number one things right now, because you can't build Rome in a day. And then being strategic, you can't, as leaders, expect to do 25 new ideas, and I never could do them well as a leader. I had to take one thing, get it done, test it, make sure we have all our ducks in a row, but get the feedback. And so I see that in the same way with us, a check and balance system of listening to the entire state so that we do that well, because otherwise fixing things is so much harder. And if we don't listen to both sides, it's always in a fix it mode. And that takes a tremendous amount of energy. So that would be that's what I'm thinking right now.
No, that's great. Appreciate that. I want to get your thoughts about as the Minnesota Legislative Exchange continues to grow and more lawmakers are recruited to participate and be part of this, and maybe Jake and the Citizens League team has already asked you to do this, but if you were going to go out and recruit one of your colleagues or convince somebody, maybe even somebody who's skeptical of doing this kind of bipartisan activity, how would you sell it to them? What would be your pitch? And along the same lines, I'm curious if any of you have gotten any pushback from any of your colleagues saying, why are you doing that? Like, you don't need to go travel around with somebody on the other side. What's happening there? I'm hopeful that probably doesn't happen a lot in the Minnesota House, but you never know. So just curious if you've gotten any kind of questionable feedback. You don't have to name names, of course. But and also thinking about recruiting folks, how you would explain it to them or pitch it to them as we think about the program going forward.
Well, I'll go ahead. Well, it's an easy sell, I think, because I think it's a fantastic program. I was delighted to be selected to participate in it. And it's a great opportunity to get to know someone who I didn't really know, and that's Natalie Zeleznikar. As she said, we serve on the health committee, but it was such a condensed session that we didn't really have an opportunity to expand and work on things. But hopefully we will. But I've thought about people that I would encourage to do, and I think for me, I think it's an easy sell because it's a great program. It's set up well, and it's set up to get to know your colleague on the other side and look for ways to cooperate and collaborate. And so for me, it's piece of cake.
To me, I would say if I'm selling it to some other members, it was a fabulous program. The Citizens League and the Exchange Group did a great job in helping organize and set up the day, help organize just all the logistics and the meals and a breakfast and a break and da da da. But it was an exhausting day, 2 days, one in each district. But I would do it again in a minute because I've learned so much about other parts of the state, other businesses, what they're looking for, other bonding projects that were done in Rep. Clardy's district, and just the amazing work that many of us have done that you don't ever get to see the end result. So it's exhausting. It's a long day. And you got to really commit to it. But I would say that, again, if you could be king for a day or leader for a day, I would just say that I would highly recommend my members to try to engage in this as best you can. If you can do multiple teams at a time. I just know the work on the citizens team was very heavy and a lot, but so appreciated. I think this is going to gain momentum as time goes on.
Mhm. I would like to jump in. I guess if I'm talking to a colleague, I would talk to them about growth and effectiveness, that they can grow their brand or grow their knowledge by getting to understand, I don't want to say competing interests, but the whole issue, and the other thing about this program is that you're kind of in the driver's seat. The other member sets up the locations you're going, but it's not staged beyond that. You get to ask the authentic questions. So going back to, if you want to stay in your lane and stay where you are, that's fine. But if you want to grow and actually serve more people, this is an opportunity to understand and to practice in a safe space. So I 100% would endorse it.
That's great. Representative Zeleznikar, your
I
pitch
would
for recruitment?
I would say the same thing. I think what this really highlighted for me is we go there elected for our district to serve that district. But in order to serve that district, you can't have success unless you're able to work collaboratively to get something done to serve your district and or any of the other members' district on the screen today. And I think, I knew that, having worked in healthcare and running 24-hour operations and having working with various different titles and positions and all that. But I think when you remove all that, it comes down to the people, not the party. And so in order to be successful, with really solid outcomes, it means thinking that way, that we are not, either party won't be success. It's not, what do we call a win? A win or a loss. A win is when the Minnesota wins. And so looking at it from a strategic way of finding that opportunity every place we can, I think is really important.
Mm-hmm. So I want to get your thoughts about how this exchange and how building these kinds of relationships might impact even your understanding of, political perspectives on the other side of the aisle. And I want to reflect on that in the context of what Minnesota is experiencing right now with this federal immigration operation and ICE agents. And I think a lot of people from the outside are watching it and view this as something that's happening in Minneapolis. And those of us that live here know that these operations are happening all over the state, in Minneapolis, St. Paul, the suburbs, in places like Wilmer, around Minnesota. And so I want to get your thoughts about, I think a lot of Minnesotans are looking for a way to turn down the temperature on all of this and reflect on what's happening and what our values are as Minnesotans. And so, just curious to get your thoughts about how this experience and in general has, informed, how you think about a difficult issue like this and something that has been really polarizing, right? And as Vice President Vance is here in Minnesota today talking about these operations, et cetera. We have been the focal point of the country as a result of this. And so I want to, get your sense of if, some of this has helped you think about and consider perspective on how we deal with situations that come up, even as difficult as this one has been.
I'm jumping in way too early for this. My thoughts have not been formulated. This whole situation right now just seems very personal to me. And I think that everyone in this room right here is being impacted by trauma, whether they understand it or not. It's not just the people that are highlighted right now, but we are now having a culture or a whole state that's been affected. Little kids. I'm a teacher. I just retired 2 weeks ago after 30 years. But anyway, I am a teacher, and I noticed that there were 4 kindergartners that weren't coming to school. And kindergartners, the importance there is that they were bilingual. They were learning English, they were learning Spanish, and they were learning how to do school, right? So, with the idea of this whole being trauma built into our system, we need to figure out how we're going to, what kind of mechanisms we need to put in place for a healthy society as we go forward. Because we'll have to remember that these kids, did miss school and what else is going on. But I also thought of, I will keep this short, I promise. But I also thought of like my own dad that was almost lynched, because he was a soldier and in Florida back during WW2. So it brought back generations of trauma. So we have to acknowledge that they're generations of trauma. And we also have to make plans for the future of how to make Minnesota whole again, regardless of what your belief is. And with that in mind, this morning we had a meeting of legislators, Dems and Republicans, around education. And because of probably this experience, I was able to be a little more reflective in my conversation with a specific member from the other side of the aisle. But had this maybe not been part of my experience, I might not have even had a conversation with them. But I was really interested in the why, because I know my why, but I wanted to know his why. I also wanted to be able to talk to him just to see if there was any type of compromise. So, with all that being said, this whole program for me has made me more of a reflective learner, but I also think that it's important to talk about the elephant in the middle of the room and to, when we talk to people about our why, to be able to listen to and come to some type of, I don't want to say consensus because that's not like maybe reality right now, but some kind of way to understand their approach to this. So
No, I appreciate that. Thank you for those thoughts. And thank you. Congrats on your retirement. And thank you for your decades of teaching. Representative Baker, Zeleznikar, Carroll, thoughts
I
about kind of how this can help out in the, especially in these kind of difficult circumstances?
just piggyback off of Mary Clardy said it so eloquently, but I think, being intentional, we all know our why. We all know how we feel. We all know whatever life situations have shaped us and those around us. But I think intentionally pausing in the midst of chaos or in the midst of fear or in the midst of anger, in the midst of anything. We don't do that. You don't have to do that when it's joyful times, but when it's difficult times, that's when leaders show up. Because when times are easy, there's a million decisions that could have been made and nobody cares because it's an easy, happy item. But when it's difficult situations like we find ourselves in, I think that's where this program is going to shine, because we have to be intentional and to to bring our passion in a way of asking the why and considering what the why is for somebody else. And that could be even in our own caucus, because I believe that happens too. Even our own caucus has many whys on each side of the aisle, and then each side of the aisle. And so to remember that, we're in the same book, and hopefully we can move closer in the chapters. And one of the other things it taught me, I'm generally a wine or a gin and tonic person when I choose a drink. And I think if you have a beer at a brewery, we both started with that. And I don't think that's a bad solution today, to just spend time eye to eye, no text, no email, no phone. I mean, I'm old school. I spent my life caring for seniors. I like to spend one-on-one time with people to really know them and understand them. And and when you do that, you're not only talking about politics, you're talking about your family, where you're going on vacation, what your hobbies are, other things. And so I think I will be way more mindful because of this experience.
I think I'll just comment. I kind of mentioned this a little bit earlier, but there's a lot of things right now that is happening here in Minnesota regarding the immigration perfect storm we find ourselves in, around the fraud stuff that we've been talking about. And I think that what we all agree, I think mostly on, is let's get the criminals off the street. Let's agree that the fraud needs to be addressed. Those are the big things that have kind of gotten the big headlines, but it's how we get there. Because again, as a Republican who always really does support law enforcement and law and order, we've had Democrat and Republican presidents in the past have said that many times over. What we find today, which is really struggling and challenging, is it's the level of enforcement. Again, I'm asking questions about how people are treated once they're detained. I'm asking questions about where can I get information. I don't want people to engage. I don't want people to, whatever. I want can give information. And that's what's the frustrating part for me. I want to get information from our agencies as to how this could have happened about the missing money. So so the core of it is, I think we agree that law enforcement and rules need to be followed, but it's how it's being done, the tactics that are being used that are really, I think, challenging to everybody. And you can't ignore what you see, but you can't believe everything you see on or read on social media. So it's all about what you see, where you see it, how you see it, and you got to filter through that. And as a state rep, that again, we represent 40 to 45,000 people. There's a lot of people counting on us to please just let us know that you're paying attention. Let us know that you're listening to us, because we are. And at home, I'm doing so many meetings with minority groups and folks that are really scared, and employers and things that have shut down the businesses. All we can do is be there, because we have zero authority to really make a change. But no matter what, we're there to protect or to listen to our communities and to share what we learn to the authorities that we hope are listening.
Let me just say amen, brother. I hear you, and I agree with you on a lot of that. It's really frustrating. I think we all want to do something about this situation, but the problem is that our authority, our power is extremely limited, if not non-existent. So it's incredibly frustrating, because you listen to people, you feel their pain and disappointment and anger, and you want to do something. That's why we're in these positions. We're here to help people, to serve people, to make our districts and our state better. But when we're in this situation where we have so little opportunity for input, it's incredibly frustrating. And it's just, I find it outrageous what's going on. And I'm not going to get into the weeds about that, but I think most people can agree on it. That poor guy who got hauled out of his house in St. Paul in the freezing weather in nothing but his boxers and a robe, I think is unconscionable. So, we have to come together. We have to do something. And in terms of how we do it, we have to get to the decision makers. I mean, I'm a rank and file legislator. I think, well, Natalie too, and Dave, you're probably in leadership. And by the way, Representative Baker, I think, is a very respected legislator. I look to him. I listen to him. When he speaks, I listen. I don't do that with everyone, but he is someone that I admire and look up to.
Thank
So
you.
I don't know what else to say, but I did want to share
Look at
this.
that. Legislative exchange mug. We got the swag. This is why all
I,
these other legislators need to participate in the program so they can get some swag like you and Jake have there. That's
it's my
fantastic.
new favorite mug.
That's fantastic. Well, yeah, I think we're going to wrap it up there. We're almost at the top of the hour. I just want to say thank you on behalf of everybody who's watching, everybody who will watch when this is posted online. We really appreciate all of the work that you're doing on behalf of Minnesotans, your willingness to come together in this bipartisan way to really just to showcase for people how this can go and how this can work. I think it would give hope to any Minnesotan who watches this to understand that we have this very high level of legislators who are participating in these programs and give us a direction for the future that it can get better. There is a way, there's a path to do this. And it's really been my honor to moderate this conversation. So appreciate you all so much. With that, I'll turn it back over to Julie and to Jake to close us out. And thanks again.
Yeah, thanks, Brian, and representatives, all of you. Thank you. I have had the pleasure of being on these trips with you all and getting to know you all, and I'm so grateful that so many folks tuned into the conversation and got to hear it as well. I think all of us here heard the thoughtfulness and the care and the understanding that these 4 legislators have brought to this work. And it has been such a meaningful experience for us at Citizens League to work with you all and to showcase this leadership. So for everyone listening today, I just want to remind you of, when the headlines seem hard, when we see the ugly political polarization and division and the worst of the worst cases of things where we can't find agreement, please remember these 4 legislators and many others. We've worked with others in the legislature. This is open to everyone. So as you're talking to your own legislators, encourage them to participate. The leadership of these 4 and of many other legislators we have in Minnesota is an incredible gift. And I know that they have a hard job. These folks signed up for a really difficult job, and to be in the public eye and the scrutiny and being told that nothing, that there's never enough, it's never enough. There always has to be more, find a way to defeat the other side. But at the end of the day, I think what Representative Clardy, I believe, said is, or Representative Zeleznikar maybe, a win is for Minnesota. It's not for whether the Democrats or the Republicans win. Our state is diverse. It's beautiful. We have incredible communities and people who are working really hard. And I just want to end with a note of gratitude to these 4, to all the legislators who participated in this exchange. Things feel really difficult for all of us right now, but you all are giving us a lot of hope that this is not, that Minnesota can do better, because we've been there before. And we have you all working on our behalf. So thank you. And thank you everyone for tuning in today. We will have this program in its entirety posted online probably within another day or so. Please feel free to share it widely, and stay tuned for more great experiences with the Legislative Exchange coming up. Thank you all very much.